You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Blue fast shot. Oh my word.
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. With the international break in full swing, it means no top flight action for us to talk about. No Saints v Brighton. It's still probably too far away to look forward to until we see how everybody comes back from the international break. And quite frankly, the idea of trying to round up every single match and talk about it from start to finish just didn't seem all that inspiring. But it didn't mean that domestic football was done. It gave me the perfect opportunity to talk to somebody that I've wanted to talk to for some time, and that is Chris Filckr, the owner, originator, creator of non-league programs on Twitter. He also runs Saints programs. He is a Saints fan. So I got a chance to talk to Chris about how he got involved with it, how he got started, how he became a Saints fan, all of those things. And quite frankly, the idea that somebody would catalog all of the programs that they own, the different grounds that they go to. It's interesting to me just simply because I've never done that. I don't do that. I don't know if it's the same thing for baseball fans here in the United States, given that there are 162 games. I've never been to an NFL game, so I don't know if there's a program there, but it's not something that ever crossed my mind. Maybe baseball cards are the closest thing, but it's all different. So really going into the conversation, I didn't have much of an idea of what to expect. Now, when I called Chris, it was the middle of the week, the middle of the day in the UK. And he was kind enough to take his lunchtime to sit up in the loft and get on the phone with me via Skype and have a conversation around his interest, his programs, starting the social media accounts, visiting the 92, some of his charity efforts, and more.
Hello.
And so that's the conversation
Chris,
that you'll
is that
get
you?
today.
Yeah, hi. Is that Matt?
It is. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, fantastic. Is it Matt or Matthew?
My mom calls me Matthew. Everybody else calls me Matt.
Now, as always on the show, I like to get to know a little bit more about the guests, and I couldn't really find anything on Chris when I was digging around. And other than a few articles he wrote, of course, that I was able to read prior to getting on the phone with him. But as I talked to Chris, some details kind of emerged. And because Chris's dad was a minister, they moved around quite frequently. And as an 8-year-old kid, you can imagine being uprooted every so often and being forced to move to a new city, to make new friends. And some of us maybe would enjoy that, but most of us probably would not. And so Chris did mention something that maybe his father enticed him a little bit to be able to go by buying him a Saints kit when they arrived down at Southampton and taking him to his first game against Aston Villa at the Dell. It's just after that point, after he explained to me how his dad got him to go along, taking him to his first game against Aston Villa, it's at that point that we'll pick up the conversation with Chris Filckr, the creator of non-league programs and Saints programs, and my guest on this week's show.
Into a lot of other grounds as a like growing up, or did your dad kind of did you guys not attend grounds together very often, or what was that like?
I think the earliest I could would be to watch my dad play himself when we were in Southampton, South Devon. He played for the local non-league team, so that was a kind of local park really. But from there, my first ground was Plymouth Argyle, Plymouth Park. So I was taken there, I guess, age of like 5, 6. So that gets me ticket the first of the 92 that I did. Second of the 92 would have been the Dell. And sort of various non-league grounds, which we'll touch on later, I'm sure. So home park and then the Dell.
All right. And then, I mean, did you grow up, like, were you encouraged to play sport as a child? Did you play football or cricket or anything like that? Or was it mostly just, going to watch your dad and then the other kind of people that were around?
Yeah, sure. Definitely played. Yeah, I loved playing. I think that was kind of the early on passion, playing football, which I did to the home play level. I suppose when I was at Southampton, when I lived in Southampton, I had a few trials for schoolboys at the time. So that was good. But just as that was kind of going well, at the age of 11, we moved up to Essex. So another move away from Southampton at the time. So that curtailed any sort of possibilities down here. Also, I sort of made a commitment a while ago not to play football on Sunday, just to get stuff on that. And that probably had a bit of an issue because locally here in Southampton it was a Tyro league, and that was where the scouts were, and that was on Sunday, so I didn't play there. And I admit it, I found it hard to find a league that was Saturdays only. But yeah, that's not really making excuses, because I think people who make it, and those who don't. So I don't have kind of regrets. In fact, I was playing for my kind of district up in Essex, in a game somewhere in East London on a Saturday morning. And my dad was watching, and we were going on to watch Saints at Wimbledon in the afternoon. And I just remember halfway through the game, just kind of sitting in my mind, thinking about the afternoon, looking forward to that. Whereas I probably should have been more passionate about sort of looking good in the game I was playing at. I think that's probably when I realised I didn't have that kind of fight and desire to be a pro. I just enjoy playing.
Yeah, I have a hard time focusing. I'm kind of the opposite. I have a hard time focusing on like school or work or whatever if I have a game that afternoon. I'm kind of, I start thinking about the game and the kids. I mean, I'm a teacher. The kids can tell, like, Mr. Marks, what are you thinking about later? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so I think I've been that way my entire life. I was pretty useless, 2 or 3 days a week when we were playing baseball and stuff during the week. So, it just is the way it goes. But, I mean, I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask was, when did you kind of get the itch to kind of cover a lot of the grounds? Because I've been to two, West Ham or the London Stadium and then Southampton and St. Mary's. I living in America, I've been to a number of baseball stadiums, but I guess I never really had the itch to try to cover a bunch of them. I think it is always exciting to go to a new place, but is that like a bucket list item for you, is to get to all 92 of those? And is that like a larger thing in the UK that maybe some American fans just don't understand?
Yeah, definitely. There's a fairly great set of people in the UK that like to do that. It's hard to do sort of wonder sometimes kind of where it comes from. For me, I guess the mixture. I love football. I'm quite happy watching any football. In fact, often I like non-Saints just because Saints is sometimes too stressful. I get Saints games and even the 8-0 against Sunderland. At 5-0, I think my son saying, "Can we celebrate? Are we not going to throw this away now?" It's just that constant sense of faith that they're going to make up and we need the point. So actually going to watch a random game with two clubs I don't care about is just quite enjoyable for what it is. I love travel, so I love going to new places, both in the UK and across Europe. So that's good. I like photography a bit as well. So and also like with collecting, programs like that. I think it's something some people like to collect things, tip things off, that kind of thing. And I think we're both good at that. If we can use a therapeutic session, I could even say that we used to collect airplane registrations. My dad used to go to airports and kick off the registrations. So I was recommended for that. Revelation.
So you mentioned they're just collecting the programs and other things like that. Like when did you start doing that? Was it your very first match? Did you bring home a program and was it something you realized that you kind of were interested in right then, or was it something that happened a little bit later on? And then I guess kind of what drew you to collecting the programs and kind of documenting them and cataloging them in the manner that you have?
When I moved to Southampton, I suppose, I had a couple of programs before that, but started getting the programs from the Saints game I went to. Used to go and visit Andrew Murray in the Saints program shop that was just opposite the Dell in Milton Road to start with, and then that was incorporated into the ground. after that. But yeah, so I'd go and see Andrew, and I'd maybe buy some programs of games I hadn't been to. He started doing bundles for, I don't know, 10 for £1, something like that. And yeah, so I suppose it was around that time that I started saying, okay, maybe I'll try and get some back issues. So it sort of took twofold really. One was collecting programs that I hadn't been to, games I hadn't been to, and then I always made sure if I went to a game that I would buy a program.
And when you took them home, because I'll be honest that I've never purchased a match day program from a match, but I have some here that people have sent in. I got a couple from a listener named Scott who lives in Australia, a couple from David Terry who lives in Canada, Michael Kern, and then Freddie from The Ugly Inside. They, when Freddie saw that I wasn't going to buy a program, he basically just looked at me and said, "Matt, you got to do this." And then he just handed me his after the game was over. So I have that one here on the wall. I have the first one that Ralph Hasenhüttl featured on. And then I have a couple of ones that David Terry sent me that I'm super happy with. The 76 Cup final, I have that one. And I have like the last one from the Dell and Matt Letizier's kind of testimonial match and the JPT Cup final. So I have a couple of those, and they're kind of displayed on the wall. But I mean, for you, what do you do? I mean, you have too many, I assume, to just display and have out. But do you display them, or what do you do with them?
Yeah, sure. So for a while recently, they were in the loft, and I just sort of keep the CDs for that year, and then I just put them up in the loft. But yeah, what I started the Twitter site at non-clogs that we talked about there. I thought, right, I'll get my non-league or kind of non-soaps ones down. So I put them into some IKEA tubs, and they're much more accessible now if I want to kind of take photos of them, that sort of thing. So thanks for just beginning to come down, because I started with thanks box with the site, so I need kind of easier access to them. The dream, of course, would be a man cave, which I can picture in my mind. I expect most of the listeners can already. But it would involve sports, a small bar, all the programs, lots of them on the wall. Yeah, that kind of thing. That would be where I'd like to get to, but not there yet. The wife's good, but not that good.
Yeah, I feel like my wife often wonders why I have pictures of a bunch of men in tight jerseys on my wall. But it's and I always joke that all of the players that are up here currently, only Nathan Redmond is still in the first team. So maybe I should just leave these ones up here. I don't want to put anybody else up for fear that they might leave, or just turn out like Mark Hughes, who is off to the side, so I can't see him. So, I mean, let's talk about the Twitter account, because you were kind of collecting these things kind of as you went through, life, and you went non-league and Saints programs and other things like that. But what prompted you, I guess, to start the Twitter account, which has grown rapidly, and I think are you just over 2 years old, or right around 2 years old now?
Yeah, so I think this May will be 2 years. So it's a bit of a funny. My family will tell you I'm not a social media person at all, kind of personally. So I'm not one to say here's my dinner and all that kind of thing. Not on Facebook or got any personal accounts. But I think with my non-league programs, I was thinking about the best way to kind of catalogue them, because I used to kind of write down all my Saints programs. The name, the season, who was against, which tournament, how much it cost. But I wasn't up for that. So I thought, actually, if I take a photograph of the front cover, then that kind of has all the salient details, and I'll just put them in like a Flickr account or something, and then I'll have quick, easy access to my program. So I took a photo, and I kind of started the next bit, but for some reason I thought I'll set up a Twitter account and just get a picture of it. That's the bizarre bit. I don't quite understand what I did that day, but incredibly, because it is non-league and all that, incredibly, it sort of hit a nerve, and 6,000 followers in the first kind of 18 months, and kind of opened some different doors to other things, and I love Twitter because of the interaction. So I think the accounts need to be back and forth. I don't like accounts where they just sort of shout. Someone said to me, Twitter's like you're in a pub talking to someone, so that's how you should do it. Whereas a lot of the big accounts just kind of shout things at you. But for me, it's about interaction, and the more I found I'm interactive, it's just an incredible kind of community of people now, and kind of stories and keep an eye out for each other in different ways. So it's really nice, really nice. But yeah, that's how non-league pod started. And then probably only about 2 months ago, I think I was messaging the Saints archive guy, telling him why I didn't have time to set up the Saints pods. And after we typing it, I thought, if someone else does this, I would be really annoyed, because I know that it's the section I've got. So I quickly just registered it quickly, thinking at least I've got it there. And then, of course, as soon as I registered, I did the whole thing program, and I was off and running.
Yeah, I think I've been following non-league programs for some time, but I think it was, when Saints programs came out or showed up as people were following it, and it was one of those things where this is obviously something I want to follow, because I recently went through a thing where I just kind of cleaned out my following and my timeline, just because there, like you said, there was a lot of stuff that was, people weren't there to interact, they were there to shout stuff out, they were there to promote their own stuff, and I don't know, I guess I'm too nice sometimes, and I if somebody follows or asks me to do something, I want to do it. But I found that I wind up just help promote things that I don't believe in, that I don't like. And so that's not okay with me. But anyway, Saints programs shows up, and then I kind of realize, hey, this is, it's the same guy, and this is a good excuse to kind of get in contact with you. And so I wrote down, I want to make sure I get in contact and hopefully do this. And it's, I can imagine somebody else picking that up and you just kind of kicking yourself for doing it. So I'm glad that you are doing it. But I wanted to go back to the non-league stuff just for a second, because I think for me, when I look at non-league, or I hear the term non-league, I think it's almost, it's not confusing, but it maybe is. I don't think people realize just how many clubs are out there that are playing non-league football, that are, I assume these are part-time players. They're doing other things, but they are also, doing it at a very high level. And, at some point they could actually earn promotion into the football league if everything goes right, even though that's quite difficult. So, I mean, just that community, because I think so many American fans look and we view Premier League football as the gold standard and kind of what it should be about, versus what some of these guys out there in the lower leagues and non-leagues are doing. I mean, is it more of a community feel to how things go versus maybe some of the other top level football, I guess?
Yeah, I've always kind of said that there's some non-league fans who kind of anti-Premier League, anti kind of money and all that side of things, and that's kind of fair enough. I've always obviously been stuck between the two. The Saints happen to be in the Premier League. And so I'm not against that. But equally, there's something special about non-league. Hard to describe, but the fact that a lot of people are doing things as volunteers, so on the programme side of things, it's not some flashy media department putting out a flashy programme, it's some guy and his laptop. And so the fact that things are being done by volunteers, and the welcomes that I've had at different grounds, incredible, just a more kind of relaxed feel, I guess. I mean, the fact that there are sometimes papers and decorators during the week and all that gets kind of put out every time it's FA Cup third round day. But yeah, they're just guys who need a full-time job as well as playing football, but they're obviously good enough. Seen some amazing games over the years to put on a good show. So the UK scene for non-league is excellent compared to many other countries, and is a viable thing kind of in and of itself. The fact that it's called non-league sometimes puts a negative on it, but it's very much not a negative in that way. It's an excellent sort of people that do things to look out for each other, yeah.
And I know that sometimes the volunteers and stuff, I mean, they do that because they don't have, really, the teams don't have the money to necessarily be able to pay for that stuff. And I think you wrote an article a little, maybe a year ago, maybe not quite that long, just looking at maybe some of the changes to some of the rules where teams were often, they used to be required to put out a match day program each and every day, and it was supposed to be color and contain all of this information. And people started to do it less and less, or were looking for, I guess, ways to do it less and less. And they made a rule so that they said the clubs don't have to do that. And I was kind of wondering from your perspective, like what you wrote in the article, there's a cost side of it, but it doesn't necessarily. I think people would look at it and say, well, it costs a lot of money, so we should do it. But I think you pointed out that most places break even or even make a little bit of a profit. And there are other things they could do, such as print fewer of them. And I just was wondering, at this point, how has that affected you, or has there been a backlash from fans who want that, or what's the, and to what extent, I guess, is social media driving that change simply because people can get that information kind of more up to minute, as you also wrote in the article?
Two kind of factors there. One is that the EFL last year voted and changed the word mandatory, so instead of having to produce a printed program, they said it's not mandatory. You have to produce an online program, but not necessarily a printed version if you don't want to. And in non-league teams, a number of leagues have sort of taken the same approach. Got a few kind of obviously thoughts on that. Firstly, it's very true that sales have been going down, and I think in the old days, old days, maybe 40% would buy a program, maybe sort of printing to 30% of the attendance in the good old days. But obviously recently people can get team news on Twitter right before kickoff, and it's in-date news. So I can see how social media is suggesting the demise of the printed program, as in same in the newspaper industry and in books with Kindles too. So that's a trajectory that you're not going to kind of stand in front of and put a big stop sign. But we just got a few points really. Firstly, if someone's going to go to all the trouble of putting together an online program, they've still done the editing and the photography and the journalism and all the skills needed. We're just saying, well, if you've gone that far, then why not print a few for those of us who want them? So instead of producing 5,000, just produce 200, and just for those who still want it, because still feel there is a kind of a niche for it. It's split probably into league and non-league. So in the league, so to use a local example, Eastleigh were producing a very shiny £3 excellent programme for the last couple of years in the Stuart Donald era. But obviously they're looking to cut costs, and instead of doing away with the programme, they've just pared it right down. It only costs £1 now. It's only about 24 pages instead of about 56. And I think it's just a smart decision. They've realised that fans don't actually need all the some of them are almost book-like, these Premier League programmes. And fans don't necessarily need all that, but something to take away from the game, to remember it by, to produce the information that's needed, is what kind of a number of fans are after. So in league terms, I think the message is still do a printed one, but you don't have to make such a big shiny effort. The non-league's different because they've got very little money. You can understand they don't have to go to printers and print for money. Why would they if it's not mandatory? And I guess the main point on that is that for many people, picking up a program for a game is an intrinsic part of the match day experience. And even for me, as I look at non-league games locally, if they're going to do a program, I'm more likely to go to that one than if they're not going to do a program. So the sense is for non-league clubs that, hey, we don't want that cost of printing. Often they do have a number left over, and they're gradually thinking, what's the point? The point we made is that some institutions need to be protected, like the Tower of London, heritage, that kind of thing. You have to actively protect things, otherwise they'll go. And I think the printed program is such an important part of the match day experience that rather than relaxing these rules, maybe they should be starting to make it still the case that you have to do something printed. Yeah.
I mean, so for me, as I'm thinking about this, it sounds like, the TV companies like to make the third round of the FA Cup this big thing because there is always the potential for a league team high up in the table or in the pyramid, I should say, to have to go away to one of these smaller teams or a non-league team and potentially get knocked out of the cup, and they want to talk about this magic. But it sounds like that programs have been a part of football matches for a long time, and it's maybe there is a sense of tradition there, I guess, that goes along with it. And it's like you said, you have to protect some of those things, because I think that oftentimes, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I'm going to anyway, the younger fans or fans that are newer to the game maybe don't understand. And I think I admitted that at the beginning, where I don't think we have necessarily the culture of collecting those things here, or at least I did. Maybe baseball cards or something similar, I guess. But I don't know. I just think there's there's something to it as I'm listening to you talk about it, that it goes, I think, beyond just having a book, or the team. It's not about having the team news in there. It's about a lot of the other things that go along with it, I guess.
Yeah, there's, I mean, for some people, they want that memento of the day, and there is a sense that you want to look back in years to come and look back at the program and say, oh, that was the day this, that was the day for that. I've got so many memories of my kids and Saints away games in Europe and wherever, where you just got to look at the program and the memories come flooding back. But the point we make also is that some non-league clubs have shown that you can kind of even profit out of the match day program, so it doesn't have to be a kind of a loss leader. So we're trying to push the fact that this isn't just some historic thing that we're trying to cling on to, and we just need to get with the times and forget about it. Seen some great examples even locally of clubs linking with local colleges. So if you've got someone doing a journalism course or a photography course or a graphic design course, then why not link with that local college as a non-league club? Maybe get a little bit of sponsorship out of it, get some apprentices coming across, writing a few articles for you. And in terms of sponsorship, again, it wouldn't take too much to get some local companies to put their adverts in and raise a few quid that way. I know some non-league clubs listed would say, well, yeah, we tried that, but kind of no one buys it. So that might be the case. But for a lot of clubs, they are thriving by kind of making the programme kind of part of their match day.
Well, and I know that I follow the Southampton Women's Football Club, not the one connected to Saints, but one of the other ones that's been around for a number of years, and they've done the same thing. They have a lot of volunteers working everything from the club secretary to the person who puts together their match day program and does their images and things like that. Like they're not a club that's flush with money. A lot of the girls are still, it's pay to play in some respect, and so I think it can be done, but it once again, I think it comes down maybe to the club, and every club is different. So, maybe some clubs are just in a bit of a tougher spot than others, but, it's nice that some of them are still able to do that and to give, young aspiring journalists and photographers time to practice, because that's the only way that you get better, is to have maybe just that little bit of extra pressure just nudges them to make their product a little bit better and to work a little bit harder on what they're doing and improve in their craft. So, I think that's, as a teacher, I like that idea. I think that's great. And I've been super fortunate in my time as doing this podcast to run into, 17, 18-year-old kids who do a fantastic job, both writing and speaking about the game. And then, you look at some of the graphic design work that comes out around Saints and some of those accounts that are out there, and they're doing, some people are really, really talented. I'm not one of them, but it's often nice to see some of what these people can do, and I've been helped out a lot by a number of them, so I'm truly grateful for that. But I guess in talking about the programs and collecting them over the years, like, are there a couple that stand out to you as being favorites, just for like maybe unique design? Maybe a club has a super unique program that stands out to you or something like that?
Favourites. I suppose my first program, kind of the first game I went to, the first Saints home game, the first Saints away game, they're always pretty special. I always say to people it's the last one I got, really, because I was just quite pleased to have one. So whether it's just an A4 piece of paper folded in half, or whether it's a pretty nice shiny effort, I'm not too bothered. So recently, particularly in non-league, there's been an amazing kind of set of a bit of innovation, really, in terms of program covers. There's been some with cartoon covers. There's been some kind of retro covers, recreating covers from previous years. Some really excellent ones, and they're almost like, say, with the ones you would almost put on your wall, because they're fantastic cover-wise. Obviously, content's important as well, but there's a number of those. Salford City has been doing some incredible ones for a couple of years, but I don't want to start naming them, because then I'll start forgetting a couple that I should have mentioned. But I guess Saints Big Match ones. A lot of the firsts are special, yeah.
Okay, I think that's fair enough, and I don't want to get you in trouble with anybody, so I won't do that. And I guess another thing is any of this connected to what you do on a daily basis for work, or is this just all kind of a hobby and something that you enjoy? And then I guess the follow-up question to that is Does anybody else in your family do they share in this with you, or is this something that maybe your wife has to just tolerate a little bit? As much as my wife appreciates the podcasting, enjoys the podcasting, doesn't always enjoy everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah, just me, I guess. It was a particular passion. The kids are kind of picking up programs a little bit. So I think that they're not, to be honest. No, it's just me, I'm afraid.
That's all right. It's all right. And I know that you also have some aspirations or some links with a couple of charities and some things that you want to do, because it's not just about collecting and saving and kind of remembering stuff. You have things that you would like to do with that. So, I mean, can you let the listeners in on any of maybe some details in terms of the charities that you are kind of linked with, and then what maybe some of your aspirations are in terms of what you'd like to do with some of the programs?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I do this for fun. It's just a good laugh, and I enjoy football, so that's kind of why I do it. But from a kind of a big picture life point of view, I guess, then so being a Christian, just generally want to kind of be doing positive things where possible. So now that I've got a platform like this, it makes sense to see if there's anything else that we could do to help people. So I've got sort of in a football sense, a home and away kind of aspiration. So I want to try and do some stuff here, but maybe do some overseas as well. So over here in the UK, there's an organisation called Sporting Memories. SportMemNet, I think, is their Twitter, and they work with people with Alzheimer's and depression, isolation, that kind of thing. And they basically get groups of people together to talk about sport and bring memorabilia along to kind of prompt people's memories. So I recently, for the first time, went along and took some of my programs, had a fantastic time, and hoping to go back kind of once every other month to for the local group, but also maybe try and raise some funds for them more nationally. The way I heard about it was a chap up in Gateshead said that he took his Gateshead programs into his local group, and there's a chap who was going on to the group who was generally very unresponsive, but his eyes lit up when he saw these programs. When he saw the names on the back, turned out he used to play himself, he knew these players, the games he played in as well as watched, and it was a real kind of turning point for him in terms of just being able to remember a number of things and articulate them, and that just sounded really special when I heard that. And I thought, if I can go somewhere and talk about football programs, then it actually will kind of put a light on in someone and actually kind of bring back happy memories, and that's an easy win, really. And so it turned out I went to a lovely group locally in Chelmsford, and it wasn't me at all, because it's just like 8 of us sat in a pub chatting about Saints. It was fantastic, and so that's a really good kind of local home way that can get involved, and so excited to be on that journey. And then bigger dream potentially. So part of me is wondering and looking into the possibility of surplus printed programs, of which we know there's just hundreds of thousands. We're taking a container load of them across to Africa and using them in schools to help teach English. So this is something that a charity called Football Beyond Borders in London have done a little bit locally. So this affected kids in London, not really that interested in an English textbook, but if you took, say it was in West London, and you took 30 Chelsea programs in and started to try and teach them from the programme almost to whatever level, then obviously that piques their interest. And we know in Africa there's just a real love of football and of English football over there. So, but I don't want to do it a kind of a West knows best and us a white man going across kind of solving a problem that doesn't exist. So I'm just researching a few things at the moment. I'm getting some English teachers to look at what lesson plans they could put together, because it's a bit complicated, because each program is going to be different potentially. Mm-hmm. So, as a teacher, if you've got 30 people looking at slightly different bits of text, then that might not be so easy. I think if I get programs from bigger clubs, then often there might be 20 or 30 or 40 of the same program, so that could get over that. But just doing some research at the moment, but the idea would be to do this as a one-off and see if it kind of works in inverted commas, which would be container to a port on maybe the east coast of Africa, and then white van delivering them to various kind of schools, Spanish kids, maybe doing some assembly, take some footballs as well. and maybe do that over a 2-3 week period and just see if it's something that has legs. Yeah. So that's a bit of a random one, isn't it?
I think both of those are awesome. And I was listening to you talk about, the gentleman who kind of lit up and recognized some of the players and things like that. And that's, I don't think there's anything better than that. I think just, watching or seeing the joy that football can bring to certain people. Sometimes we let ourselves get caught up in transfers and losses and poor tactics and everything else. And I think it's just a reminder that there's a lot more to it than what goes on the field. And it means sometimes I think we trivialize it a little bit, and we just turn it into something that it doesn't need to be. And you hear stories like that, and it just gives you the reminder that it brings a lot of joy to a lot of people, and it can do a lot for a lot of people. And then, you fast forward or pivot to what you're thinking about doing and looking into teaching English with them, with the programs. I think that's, a lot of people would just collect them, and hang them up or throw them away eventually. And I think what your aims are, what you're trying to do, I think, I don't know. I find it very admirable, and I think it's ambitious, and I think it's going to be, I think it'd be really, really good. And I was thinking, when my own students enjoy reading those things, because we have a lot of kids who aren't, super big fans of the English textbook. And the area that I teach in is, I teach in Southern California. So my school is 97% Hispanic. We are, over a third migrant population. So kids that are in the country less than 6 months or fewer than 6 months from time to time, they move quite frequently because their families do that. So to be able just to get them interested in something or to get them to focus on something because they're interested in, I think is always great. And I think as a teacher, we're always trying to find ways to do that. So I think both of those are fantastic, and I wish you the best in accomplishing that as you move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, no, if anyone listening has any insight or wants to get on board, then through the Twitter site, give me a shout. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what have we missed? What have I kind of glossed over in terms of our discussion with both the programs and with your your mission, I guess, to get to as many of the 92 as you can.
Yeah, sure. So we touched a bit on the whole ground hopping, and that's taken me in a strange direction as well, which I like to go to new grounds. I was contacted by an American website called Stadium Journey, and they write and rate stadiums for fans. So in the States, they've covered all the major leagues and the college leagues, but they're not so kind of strong in Europe. So I've basically, for the last couple of years, each month been writing a new stadium review, and that involves rating the atmosphere, the local neighbourhood, the stadium itself, the fans, all that kind of thing. It's not a paid position. I can occasionally blag a free media ticket to a ground when I want to, but often it's better to be in with the fans anyway. So my stadium hopping has taken a bit of an extra twist there. So I've done about 81 of the 92, about kind of 2/3 of those with Saints, and then I think overall I'm sort of 450 plus grounds. But the European ones are quite attractive to me at the moment. From Southampton, I did a review of Boulogne recently, which I think if you'd have said Boulogne to me, all I'd have thought is there should be a ferry that went there. Not much else to it. But hey, I took Friday off. I drove, sunny day, got to Calais, drove 25 minutes into Boulogne, an amazing kind of inner walled city. Loads of interest there. Obviously, the port area, but there's a lovely beach, which I wouldn't have associated with Boulogne. And then the Friday night fixture, about 3,000 there. Good support for both teams. Good standard of play. A few beers, obviously. And then stayed over, drove back the next day along the coast to Calais, and stopped at a Hastings game on my way back through Kent on the Saturday. So to me, that's happy days, isn't it? So Friday and Saturday, a couple of new grounds, brand new places that I've never been to before, and a couple more ticked off. the writing, in a sense, becomes a bit of a pain because once you're back, you kind of want to move on. But I enjoy doing it, I think. So I'm doing it for now, and it's given me an opportunity basically to say to the editors, I need to write a review. I'm off to Eindhoven next month, which is my current situation.
Yeah, well, that sounds great, and I guess that would encourage you to get to a few new places, especially places they haven't covered, and maybe it's an excuse to get to some places that maybe you normally wouldn't go to. So I think I choose places generally on the kind of cheapness of the Eurotunnel or the flights, that kind of thing. I've got a group of friends that we've got into going to Germany, games over in Germany at the moment. So often it's because of £16 flights from Stansted at an unearthly hour. But sometimes we can get ourselves to a game in Dusseldorf quicker than we could if we were going to see Saints up in kind of Preston or Manchester, something like that. So it's often maybe on what's the cheapest. But you find some gems. We went across to watch Dortmund, the kind of classic one to tick off with the wall there, 80,000 stadium. But the night before we went to a team called Bochum in Bundesliga 2, because we like to get as many grounds in as we can. Now, Dortmund was impressive. It is what it is. We knew what it was going to be. But Bochum was amazing. The atmosphere, beer on the terrace being thrown around, proper chanting, the players coming over at the end and doing salutes in front of the fans. Proper like raucous, maybe 80s style atmosphere from England. But unfortunately, a lot of our stadiums are pretty sanitised now. But some of the lower leagues in Germany have got some proper good atmosphere. So often it's not necessarily just the big shiny grounds. I quite like some of these other ones as well. Glentoran, the Oval, which was recently, that's superb. It should be a National Trust property itself. It's amazing, although they are thinking of knocking it down, sadly. Just talking about travel to some of these places, is there what's the furthest you've ever traveled to see a match?
I suppose Bucharest probably with Saints after the 2003 Cup final. We got into Europe. So I guess Bucharest, where I travelled specifically to see a game. I've been to a ground in Zambia, but there wasn't a game going on, so I don't let myself take that off. But I've been inside a stadium in Zambia. That's probably my furthest. But for a game, I think probably Bucharest, yeah.
You spoke of maybe the atmosphere, and I think as a kid who grew up going to baseball games that were pretty, my dad bought fairly cheap tickets because we weren't by any means rich, and so we would normally sit and there'd be a bunch of kids around, so it was pretty sanitized, as you would say. But you've been to any grounds where you just look around and go like, maybe this isn't the safest place to be?
Not when it's me or my mates. I think when I take the kids, I'm sometimes a bit careful. Although we worked out the other day, my daughter's first game was home to Millwall, so maybe I'm not so careful with my kids as I should have been. But no, not really. No, I think you get a bit savvy, don't you, over the years going to football matches, so you can kind of sometimes sort of smell the mood if it's going a bit the wrong way and kind of move into a different area or something. So no, I've never felt in any kind of danger or anything like that. I think certainly in Germany it's not that way. You even get away fans and home fans sitting together as well.
Right.
Less of that. I haven't really encountered anything much over the years, to be honest, on that side of things.
Well, that's good, and I hope that stays that way. And I hope it's always nice to hear the atmosphere where the fans are passionate, but it like you said, if it goes the wrong way, it's never good. But I'm glad that you managed to avoid that for the most part. But Chris, I just want to ask, like, is there anything else that you'd like to mention before we go? And if not, where, if people want to get in touch with you, whether it's because they're interested in the charity or they're just interested in programs and maybe they have pictures they want to send you of programs or whatever. I don't know if you want that or not, but where can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, I guess for the Saints fans listening, not used to the Twitter site, so it's at Saints Frogs, Frogs. And so whilst I'll be tweeting my collection, the whole idea, and if you look at the non-league Frogs Twitter, you'll see that a lot of the time it's not me tweeting, it's everyone else tweeting their pictures. So the Saints Frogs is not going to be supposed to be a library of me just displaying my collection. I just want to see Saints fans sending in pics of their programmes, and we even go as far as ticket stubs and team sheets, stuff like that, handbooks. So there's so much, obviously, a rich history at Southampton. So, yeah, if people want to just ping in stuff, I'll retweet it straight away because they'd love to see it. End up chatting about it probably, I'm sure. I just tweeted the programme from Plymouth away when we got promoted a couple of years ago, and a couple of people are already sort of reminiscing over what a great day that was. So, yeah, use Saints Prog as send in your programme pictures and we'll retweet them. Non-league progs is, so at non-league is LGE, so non-league progs, PROGS. And again, just give us a follow just for the banter really, and you get to see some amazing programs, not just non-league, we also do internationals, doing overseas programs at the moment, ladies football as well. So yeah, DM me through either of those if you want to get in contact. It'd be great to hear from you and see your collection as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll put all the links to those in the show notes so people can get in contact with you. And maybe I'll have to decide. I'll have to take a look at some of the ones that I really, really like. Maybe I'll send you a pick. And if I make it to an MLS match or maybe a USL match, there are a couple that are on that I would like to go to. We'll just see if we get they happen to land during vacation time with the whole family, so we'll see if I'm allowed to go. But if I do that, I'll send those over to you, and hopefully we can just continue to spread the love for the programs and for football. And I'm actually really, really excited about the two kind of charity branches that you have, both home and away. I think that's super cool. And I mean, yeah, I, as somebody who doesn't collect a lot of things, I think that's just having an impact outside of just yourself. You know, I think that's a big thing. And I think that's going to be really great. So thank you so much for coming on here and doing this and giving up your lunch hour to make it happen. I really do appreciate it, Chris.
Yeah, that's okay. I had only one question came in, I think, from the tweet that you put out, and it was just about the most precious program in my collection and why. I don't think I answered that one. I had a little think. It turned out it's probably the Steaua Bucharest program that I mentioned. So when Saints went to Steaua Bucharest, 2003, 2004, whenever it was, and basically I didn't get a program on the day. We arrived for the fixture about 2 days earlier to see the city and have a couple of sherbets, but we ended up in the pub the wrong side of the city. Didn't get to the game until 10 minutes after kick-off, pouring with rain, and no programs around. So I looked out for them after that, and they became quite rare. Finally, Andrew Murray, the program chap, had one, and he did an auction where you sent in your sealed bids, and I didn't realise that one of my mates was going for this as well. But in my mind, I just thought, I've got to win this. So I thought, okay, so it's worth about £1, so I'll bid 2. And then I thought, maybe £2.50, because someone else will do 2. And basically, again, I'm happy to share, except that my wife's listening. So I bid £25 for it, which was literally in my mind going, no, maybe 3. No, actually, someone will do 5. No, someone might do, yeah. And so I didn't really tell anyone until it came up with my mate, and he said he was horrified at himself because he bid a £5. So when I told him that I bid 25, and I did win, to be fair, and I photocopied it for him, so he's won, if you like. So in terms of my most valuable program, that's probably my most precious and valuable program, just because I made a bit of a fool of myself. But I've got it anyway.
Yeah, well, I think you needed that one, right? Those are some things that you need. But yeah, that question came in from Robbie, who's at Edit Southampton. So thanks for reminding me about that. I completely forgot. I clicked on somebody who had retweeted it and saw that there was no comments and moved on with my day. So oops. But anyway, Chris, thank you. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it, and I think I've learned a lot, and I think that hopefully people will get in contact with both their programs and in terms of the charity stuff. And I hope the rest of your day at work is good, and hopefully the kids will feed off some of my enthusiasm as I go in today.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thanks for having me on. It's been fantastic. Really good. Thanks.
That does it for episode 115 of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks to Chris Tuck for taking time out of his lunch to talk to me about non-league programs and Saints programs. If you want to follow him on Twitter, you can do so at NONLGEPROGS or at Saints PROGS on Twitter. If you have stuff, you have programs, overseas programs, non-league programs, whatever, send them in. Share the love. And the show wouldn't be possible without people like you listening to the show. It wouldn't be possible without guests like Chris who take up time out of their day to talk to me. And I wouldn't have been able to make that Skype call if it wasn't for the people supporting the show on patreon.com. For those people who support the show on patreon.com/SFC delivery in exchange for a little bit of money, I give them access to some extra things, including a private chat, one extra episode a month, and priority for having their questions answered each and every week on the show. If you're interested, head on over to patreon.com/SFC delivery and see if that's right for you. If it's not, it's totally fine. I just appreciate you listening. But maybe consider writing a review or sharing the show with a friend, hitting them up on Twitter, tagging the account. All of that stuff helps, and I really do appreciate it. The show would also not be possible without the partners of the show, including the Southampton page. For all your Southampton FC news and needs, be sure to follow the Southampton page on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, the logo for the show is done by the We Are Southampton page on Instagram, who, by the way, congratulations, just hit 9,000 followers. So if you're not one of those 9,000, you should be in that number. The best match day edits going. Trust me, I make my own. They're not as good. They're not as good as his. That's what I meant. I didn't want that to come out. To clarify, he makes better edits than me. It's okay. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. We'll be back next week. To be sure not to miss it, head on over to southamptondelivery.com. Make sure you're subscribed. Check out the newsletter. Subscribe to that as well. That'll be in your inbox on Friday. And until next time, remember that together, we march on.